Welcome back to Snippet Coder, and we are back with another video, and this is the 15th episode of our Grocery NodeJS and Flutter e-commerce app series. In this video we will write the API for the orders creations and the Stripe payment gateway integration in our application. So before starting the video, if you are new to our channel, subscribe to the channel by clicking on the subscribe button and click the bell icon to get notified about our latest videos. Thank you. So in our application we are going to use this package, that is Stripe package, and we have to just install the package in our application, and the documentation is very straightforward. We have to just use few of that inbuilt function of this package. On the basis of that we will create the customer, and we will also create the card for the customer, and then we will do the payment and everything in our API. And for getting the API we have to go to our Stripe, and here is our Stripe dashboard, and here the option for the developers. We have to click here. After that we have to click here in the API keys, and here we have the secret key, and we have to click on the reveal test key. When we click over there it will show us that key, and we have to copy that key and we have to paste in our application. So now let's move to the code part. So now we have to add the package first. We have to put here npm install Stripe. So here you can see that package has been added. This Stripe package has been added to our application. So now we have to go to our config, and there we have the app.config.js file, and there we have to add one more object for our Stripe, and we will put here constant Stripe underscore config, and we have to create the object here. We will put here Stripe underscore key, and we have to put that key, and the key will be start with the sk underscore test, because we are using the test environment here. We have to put here test. And here the rest of the key will come here. We have to just copy paste the key here. Then we have the currency here. We have to put the currency which we are going to use in our Stripe. And here we are using INR, that is Indian currency. And from here we will export this Stripe underscore config. So what we did here, we have just created one object for the Stripe config, and there we added two variables. First one is Stripe key, then we have the currency here. And from here we just export that variable here. Now we have to modify our existing model for the user model. We have to go to the model folder. There we have user.model.js, and here we have to add new field. That field will be used for storing the customer ID which we create for the customer in our Stripe database. And here we will put Stripe customer ID, and the type will be string, and we will make it as optional here. After that we have to create one more model here, and we have to go to the model folder. There we have to just create here order.model.js file, and here we have to create the object here constant mongoose is equal to require, and we have to import that mongoose package here, mongoose. Then here we have constant order is equal to mongoose.model. Here we have to give the name of the model, that is order. Then we have mongoose.schema, and here we have to create first one will be user ID, and the type will be string, and we will make it as a required true, and this field will be mandatory. Then we have the products here, and here we have to create the first variable will be product, and the type will be mongoose dot schema dot types dot object ID, and the reference will be product, and this will be required here. The second one will be amount, type will be number, and required true. And the third one will be quantity, number of quantity we are going to order for that particular product, type will be number, and the required true. Then after that we have one more variable, that will be grand total, type will be number, required true. Then we have order status, type will be string, required true. Then we have transaction ID, and here we will put the Stripe ID, payment ID which will be generated in the Stripe, and that we will put here, and type will be string, and we will make it as a optional here, because the first time we create the order we have to make it as a pending order, and once the payment is confirmed then we will add the payment ID, that is transaction ID, and we will change the order status to complete, or you can say success. And after that we have timestamp true, and here we have to put curly brackets, and from here we will export module.exports is equal to order. So what we did here, we have created the model for that orders, and there we have user ID, then we have the products, that will be array, and inside the products we have that object for the product ID, that will be the object type of the product model. Then we have the amount here, then we have the quantity here. Then here after the products we have grand total of the total order amount. Then we have the order status, then we have the transaction ID, and then we have the timestamp here. Now we have to create one more model, and for that we have to go here and we will put here cards.model.js file, and this model will be used for storing the credit card information of the user. And here we have constant mongos is equal to require, and here we have the object for the mongos. Then here we have constant cards is equal to mongos.model. Then we have that name of the model, that will be customer cards, that you can say as a table name also. Then we have mongos.schema, and the first one will be card name, and this will be the name of the person whose the card belong to. Then we have the type here, string, required false. Then we have the card number here, type will be string, required true, and we will make it as a unique here so that we can put the unique card here, and it will be unique true. Then we have the card expiry here, type will be string, required true. Then we have the card CVC number, type will be string, required true. Then we have our customer ID, and that ID will be of our Stripe ID, type will be string, required true. And this field is optional. If you don't want to store the CVC number, you can remove it just for the testing purpose, or you can say for the test data we are just providing this field. Then here will be the card ID, and this ID will be generated at the Stripe, and whenever we add any new card in the Stripe, it will generate the new card ID over there in the Stripe, and that ID we have to store here. And the next time if user order anything, we have to check in our local database if that ID, that card store or not. If that is stored, then we have to pick this ID and we have to pass while doing the payment. If that card is not exists in our system, we will create a new card and we will add the entry in our database. And here the type will be string, required true, and here we have to put timestamp true. And from here we will export model.exports cards. So what we did here, we have created a model for the cards here, and the name of that table will be customer cards. Then we are creating a schema with the card name, card number, and the card number we are making as a unique here. Then we have the card expiry here. Then we have the card, one field we miss here, that will be card expiry month, and the type will be string, required true. Then we have the card expiry here, then we have the card CVC. If you don't want to include this field, you can ignore this. Then we have the customer ID, then we have the card ID here, then we have the timestamp. Then from here we are just exporting the card model. So now let's move further, and there we will create the Stripe service file. So now we have to go to the service folder, and there we have to create a new file, that is stripe.service.js file, and here we have to import our Stripe keys and all from the app.config. Constant stripe_config is equal to required, and here we have to put /config/app-config. Then here we have constant stripe is equal to required stripe, and here we have to put the key here, that will become from the stripe config.stripe key. Then here we have to create the functions. First one will be a async function create customer. Here we have params callback. Here we will put try catch. Here we have the error. From here we will return callback error, and here we have to put constant customer await stripe.customers.create, and here we have to pass the name params.name. Then we have the email. We will pick from the params.email, and here we will return callback null customer. So what we did here, we have just calling the stripe.customer API for creating the customer here by passing the name and the email ID, and it will generate the customer in the server of the Stripe and give us the customer ID, and all the customer detail will come here in this object. And from that we only require the customer ID, that we will save in our user model, where we created the new field, that is Stripe customer ID. And the next function will be async function add card. Here we have the params callback Here we will use try catch, and for the catch we will copy this and we will paste here. Inside the try we will use a constant card_token is equal to await stripe.tokens.create, and here we will pass name. We will pick from the params.card_name. Then we have the number here. We will pick from the params.card_number. Then we have the expiry month. We will pick from the params.card_expiry month. Then we have the expiry year. We will pick from the params.card_CVC. It will be card_expiry year. Then we have the CVC. We will pick from the params.card_CVC. Then here, after calling this, we will get that token here, and that token we will use by calling this API, that is card is equal to await stripe.customers.create source. Here we have params.customer_id, and here we will pass source that we will pick from this card_token.id. So what it will do, whenever any card added, it will make that card as a default card for that particular customer and give us the source ID. Then we have to create the source here, and this will return us the card ID, and that card ID and the customer ID will be used for calling the payment here in the Stripe. And from here we have callback null card, we have card.id. So what we did here, we have created a function for the add card, and here we are just getting the card token by calling this stripe.tokens.create on the basis of the card number, card name, card expiry, and the card year, and the card CVC. Then after getting this card token, we are just calling here create source on the basis of that particular customer ID, and here we are just passing the source, and here instead of that we have to put this one, and it will use the card_token.id, and it will generate the card ID for us, and that card ID we have to use to store in our card table with the help of these information plus this card ID. And in the next time, if the user is going to do the payment, we have to check in our local database if that card exists or not. If that exists, then we will just pick that card ID and we will use to do the payment. Else we will create a new card in the system of the Stripe by calling this API, and then we will generate the new card ID, and that we will store in our database. Now we have to create one more function. We have here async function generate payment intent. We have params callback. Here we will use try catch. Inside the try we have constant create payment intent is equal to await stripe.paymentintents.create, and here we have to pass receipt_email. Here we have params.receipt_email. Then we have the amount here. We have params.amount. Then we have the currency here, and for that we are using a stripe config.currency. Then we have the payment_method, and we are using a params.card_id. Then we have the customer here, and here we have params.customer_id. Then we have the payment_method_types, and here we have to pass card, and from here we will call back null, and we will pass this payment intent here. And from this payment intent we require the client secret ID, and that we have to pass to a Flutter application, and from there we are going to use the package of the Stripe, so that if there is a 3D skewer on the card, that will be handled by that package. For that purpose we have to use some portion of the payment in our Flutter application also. So this function also ready, that is generate payment intent. What it will do, we have to pass the receipt email, amount, currency, payment method. This payment method will be that card ID which we will generate here. Then we have the customer here, that we are passing here params.customer_id. Then we have the payment method type, that will be card here, and from here we are just doing the callback here. And from here we will export module.exports. Here we have create customer, then we have add card, then we have generate payment intent. So now let's move further, and we will create our order service.js file, and we have to go to the services, and here we have order.service.js file. So here we have to import some of the models files, and here we have constant user is equal to require /model/user.model. Then we have constant cards is equal to require /model/cards.model. Then next will be order, and here we have to put here order, and after that we have to import two services. First one is constant stripe service is equal to require /services/stripe service. Then we have constant cart service is equal to require /services/cart.service. And here we have to create the three function. First one is a async function create order. Here we have params, then we have the callback here, and from here we have to first find the user in our user database, user.find1, and we will find on the basis of that id params.user id. Here we have the function error user db, and from here we will check if error, then we will return here callback error. In the else condition we have to check here if not of user db dot stripe customer id, and here we will check if the user that stripe customer id is not exist for that particular user, then we will get a new user in the stripe. Else if we already have the stripe id, then we will pick it from that our local database, that is our database, that is user model database. And before that we have to create one variable where model is equal to empty object, and here we have to make it async here because we have to call that stripe service also. And here we will put await stripe service dot create customer, and here we have to create the object here. First one is a name, and we have to pick it from the user db dot full name. Then we have email, we will pick from the user db dot email. Here we have error results. Here we will check if error, we will return here callback. Else if we have the results here we will check if results, then we will assign our user db dot stripe customer id is equal to results dot id, and we will save here user db dot save. So what it will do, basically we are checking here if we are getting any result from our create customer service in the stripe, and on the basis of that result we are getting that customer id. We will just assigning the stripe customer id with the result.id, and then we are just saving this model. And here in the model this model object which we have created here, we have to assign few items here. We have model dot stripe customer id is equal to this result.id, and here in the else condition, if we found any stripe customer id from our database, then we will just assign here model dot stripe customer id is equal to user db dot stripe customer id. So after that we have to just find the card in our card model. So if we not found that particular card in our database, then we have to call the stripe API to generate the card id. Else if we found that card id on the basis of that card information in our database, we will just pass that card id to our next request. And here we have cards dot find one, and here we have to get the object here customer id. Here we have model dot stripe customer id, then we have the card number. Here we have params dot card underscore number, then we have the card expiry month. Here we have params dot card underscore expiry month, then we have the card expiry year. Here we have params dot card underscore expiry year, and here we have to put it async here. Then here we have function error card db, and here we will check if error, we will return here callback error. In the else condition we will check here if we not found any card information in our database, card db is not of card db, that means card db is null. Then we will call here await stripe service dot add card, and we have to pass the object here. Here we have card underscore name, we'll pick from the params dot cards, and here we have card name. Then we have the card underscore number, we will pick from the params dot card number. Then we have the card underscore expiry month, then we have card underscore expiry year, then we have card underscore cvc, and here we will put params dot card expiry month, then we have params dot card expiry year, then we have params dot card cvc, and here we have to put comma. Here we have error, then we have results. Here we will check if error, we will return the callback here, and if we are getting the results here, we will create one object here constant card model is equal to new cards. Here we have card ID. That card ID will come from the results.card, because if I go to the add card service, and here you can see we are just returning here card, and that we have the card.id here. After that we have card name, that we have to pick from here, and we have to pick from here params.card name. Then we have the card number, that will pick from the params.card number. Then we have card expiry month, params.card expiry month. Then we have card expiry year, we'll pick from the params.card expiry year. Then we have card CVC, we have params.card CVC. And the last one will be customer ID, that we have to pick from our model.stripe customer ID. And here we have call card model.save, and after that we have to assign model.card ID is equal to results.card. So what we are doing here, we are checking here if we have that particular card in our database or not. If not, then we are just calling our add card service, and on the basis of that we are just getting the results here, and then we are just adding the data in our database. And here also in the else condition, if we found a card in our database, we will just assign here model.card ID is equal to carddb.card ID. And after that we have to just call here Stripe service for generating the payment intent, and that we will return us the client secret and all. We have to call here await Stripe service dot generate payment intent, and here we have receipt underscore email. We will pick it from the userdb dot email. Then we have the amount here, params dot amount. Then we have the card underscore ID, that will pick from our model dot card ID. Then we have customer underscore ID, that will pick from our model dot stripe customer ID, and that will be ID. We can verify it from our Stripe service file also. Here we required customer underscore ID, card underscore ID, and it should be in the lowercase. And here we have error results. Here we will check if error, we will return a callback error. If results, we will assign this model dot payment intent ID is equal to result.id. Then we have model dot client underscore secret is equal to results dot client underscore secret. And after that we have to generate the order here in our database, and for that we have to just use our card service dot get card, and we have to get the card from there. On the basis of that user ID user db dot id. Here we have function error card db, and here we will check if error, we will return here callback error. And here in the else condition we will check here if card db, that means there will be any data in the card. Then we have to create two variables. First one is where products is equal to empty array. Then we have where grand total is equal to 0. Then here we have to loop through to the card db dot products dot for each. Here we have product, and we will fill the array here products dot push product, and here we have product dot underscore id. Then we have the quantity here, and we'll put here product dot quantity. Then we have amount here, product sale price. Then we have to make the grand total amount, and we'll put a grand total product sale price. After that we have to create the model for constant order model is equal to new of order. Here we have user ID, and we will assign from the card db dot user ID. Then we have the products here. We are assigning here that products array. Then we have the order status, and we will make it as a pending because the payment is not yet confirmed. Then we have the grand total, and we will assign with the grand total here. After that we will call here order model dot save dot then response. We will assign here model dot order ID is equal to response dot underscore ID, and from here we will return callback null, and we will return here this model. And here we have the catch error, and we will return here callback error. So our function is ready. So what we are doing here, we have to go through here. So we have created a function here, create order. There we are just checking in the user table if that user having the data, and in that data we are checking here if that user is having that Stripe customer ID or not. If it is not having, then we have to create the customer in our database, in the Stripe database, on the basis of that name and the email. Then on the basis of that result we are getting, we are just assigning that result.id, that is the customer ID in our database with that userdb.stripe customer ID. Then we are just saving here. After that we have to assign the model.stripe customer ID with that result.id, and else condition, if we already have that stripe customer ID, we will return in our model.stripe customer ID. After that we are just checking in our database for the cards on the basis of that particular card. If we are having that particular card in our database, then we are just assigning that card ID to the model.card ID. In the else condition, if that card is not in our database, then we are just calling here stripe service.addCard, and it will create that card in our Stripe database, and that card will be assigned to that particular customer on the basis of that customer ID we are assigning. And here we forgot one thing, we have to assign here customer underscore ID. Here we have params. Here we have to pick it from the model.stripe customer ID, and if we go to the add card, here we have this customer ID. So after that we are checking if there will be any error. We are returning a callback error. In the else, if we are getting the result here, we are just creating the model for the card model on the basis of that card ID, card name, number, expiry, month and year, CVC. That is optional. If you want to store, you can. If we don't want to store, you can leave it. Then we have the customer ID, and after that we are just saving it. And in the model.card ID, we are just assigning that result.card in our model. And here in the else, if that card is already exists in our database, then we will just pick it from there. After that, we are just generating the payment intent by putting that receipt email, amount, card ID and a customer ID. And in the result, we are just assigning the model.payment intent ID with that result.id, and then we have the model.client underscore secret with that result.client secret. And after that we are just calling here get card service, and from there we are just picking the cart of that particular user. Here we have the two variables, products and the grand total. By looping with that card db.products, we are just assigning that this product array with the new object of that product ID. Then we have the quantity, then we have the amount here. After that we are just getting the grand total on the basis of that product sale price in all that products. And then here we are just getting the order model by assigning the user ID, the products array. Then we have the order status pending. Then we have the grand total here. And then we are just saving this order model. In the response, we are just getting the model.order ID, and then we are just assigning that model.order ID on the basis of that newly created order ID. And the result, we are just passing this model, and inside that model we have that order ID. And then we have our client secret, payment intent ID. Here we have the card ID also. Then we have the customer ID here, this one. So now let's move further and let's create the new function here. And the next function will be our async update order. Here we have the params callback. Here we have to create one model where model is equal to order status params dot status. Then we have the transaction ID params dot transaction underscore ID, and in the parameters we have to just pass here status like transaction failed or transaction successful, that we have to pass here. Then we have the transaction ID, so whatever the transaction ID of the Stripe, that we have to pass here. After that we have to check in our database order dot find by ID, and update we have to pass here params dot order ID. Then we have to pass this model because these two things we have to update in our database. Here we have to create the object here, use find and modify false. Here we have then response, and we will check here if not of response. Then we have callback here order update failed. In the else condition we will check here if params dot status is equal to success. Then from here you can just clean the cart. That we are not covering here because that is a simple part, you can do yourself also. Just you have to just loop through the cart and you can delete all the entries on the basis of that particular user. And from here we will return callback null response. And here we have the catch error, return callback error. So what we did here, we are just getting the status and the transaction ID. Once the payment is confirmed from the Flutter application, we have to call this API so that we can update the status, whether it is a success or a failed transaction. And we have to pass the transaction ID here, and we have to update it by params.order_id. On the basis of that particular order ID, we have to update the order, and then we are getting the response here. If the response is success, that means that transaction is successful, order is created. Then we have to just clean the database from here, that card database. Now we have to create a last function, that will be a async function get orders. Here we have params callback. Here we have to call order dot find one, and we have to use a user ID, params dot user ID. We have to populate that products here. We have to pass the path here. Path will be products. Then we have to populate that product details on the basis of that path. Here we have path product. Here we have model product. Then we have to show the selected fields if you want to show the selected field, else you can show all the fields. Then we have to populate the categories also. Inside that we have path category. Then we have the model here, that is category. See in the caps. Then in the select we have to just show the category name. Here we are then response return callback null response. Here we have catch error return callback error. And from here we have to just exports create order, update order, and get orders. So now let's move further and we will create a controller file for calling all these functions from the order controller. Now we have to create the controller file. For that we have to go to our control folder, and here we have to create order_order.controller.js file. Here we have to import our order service. Order service is equal to require /services/order. And then here we have to create export.create is equal to require response next, and this should be exports. And here we have to create the model, where model is equal to user ID, and that user ID we will pick from our authentication token. Here we have request.user.user ID. Then we have card number, request.body.card_number. Then we have card_expiry month. Here we have request.body.expiry month. Then we have card_expiry year, and we will assign here. Then we have card_CVC. Here we have request.body.card_CVC. Then we have the amount here. We have to pick it from the request.body.amount. Here we have to call order service.create order. We have to pass this model. Here we have error results. Here we will check if error. We will return to next error. Else we will return here response.status 200.send, and we will send here message success. Then we have the data here. Here we will put results. So what we did here, we have created export.create, and there we are creating a model with the user ID, card number, card expiry, then we have the card year, then we have the card CVC, then we have the amount here. And here we have to check one more thing, and we require the card name also. We have card_name request.body.card name. Then here we are just calling order service.create order by passing this model, and here we are checking if there will be any error. We have to move to the next error, else we are just returning here response.status 200, and we are sending here message success. And data, we are sending whatever the data return we are getting from this create order. And then we have to create one more function, exports.update is equal to request response next. Here we have to call order service dot update order. Here we have request.body, then we have error, then we have results here, and here also we have to do the same. We have to copy this one and we have to paste here, and next one also is same. We have to just copy this and we have to paste here. Here we have to change it to find all, and this one we will change it to get orders. and here we have to change to request.user because here we require the user ID only. So now we have to move further. We have to add our app.routes, and for that we have to go to our routing folder, and here we have to just copy any of these and we have to paste here. Before that we have to add a controller here. Constant order controller is equal to require controller controller. Now we have to copy this and we have to paste here. This one we will change it to order. Then we have to again copy and again copy paste, and this one we will change it to get. This one we will change it to find all. Here we have the post request, and here we have to change it to put request, and here we will change it to. So our routing file is also ready. So what we are doing here, we have just created the route here for the /order get request. Here we are just passing the authentication token, and there we are just calling order controller dot find all. Then we have the post request. We are just calling here order controller dot create request. Then we have the put request. There we are just calling order controller dot update request. So now let's move further and let's do the testing of the API. So let's see, is it working or not? So first of all, we have to generate a token here. For that, we have to just call our login API. We will click here send. So here we have the token. We have to copy this token. So now we have to go to create our post request, and here we have our post request. In the header, we have to pass authentication. And first, if we not pass anything, we will just click on a send request. We will get the error here, no token provided. So now if I put here authorization, and here if I not provide any token, if I click on a send, we are getting the same. And here if I put basic and put the invalid, we are getting here unauthorized. So now if I put the valid token here, now if I click on a send request, we are getting here success, but the response is not getting. So now let's see that data is created or not. Here first we go to the users table. Here you can see we are getting here Stripe customer ID. That means the request is generated successfully. So now if I go to the cards table, customer cards, there is no data here. And let's see in the orders table, the data is there, but the cards is not coming here. So let's see what the issue is. So the issue seem to be here we missed the object, and here we have to put curly brackets. And here we have to put card, and also here in the params dot amount we have to multiply with the 100, because whatever the amount we are sending, we have to multiply it with 100 to make it the proper currency over there, proper amount. And now let's test the application to see is it working or not. And before that we have to go to our MongoDB also. So here in the user we don't have that Stripe user ID, and we don't have the orders or that cards. So now let's execute that API to see is it working or not. So now if I click on a send request, in the response you can see here we are getting Stripe customer ID, this one. Then we have the card ID, this one. Then we have the payment intent ID. Then we have the client secret. Then we have the order ID, this one. So that means our API is working fine. All the information we are getting. So now let's see in the MongoDB also. If I refresh here, you can see here we are getting Stripe customer ID, this one. We can match from here. From here we will refresh and we will go to the custom cards. You can see here that card information coming here. This is the card ID which is generated at the Stripe. Then we have the orders, and here you can see we are getting that all the information, user ID. Then we have the products here. We have 2 products which we have added in our request in our cart. If we go to the cart, you can see here we have 2 products that are coming here, and both are showing in the orders. And grand total is also 36 if we go there, and here you can see the amount is 26 and the 10, so grand total will be 10. So now let's test the second API, that is our update order, and for that we have to just put the authorization code here, and we will copy it from here. And here order ID we have to copy and we have to paste here. In the status we are putting here success. If we go to our MongoDB, in the orders you can see here status is pending. and there is no transaction ID. So now if I put here transaction ID test underscore trans ID, test underscore transaction ID, and now if I click on send request, you can see here we are getting a data here, and if I refresh here, you can see here status we are getting success, but this data is not coming, the updated one, and all this data is even not required, we can remove from the response. But in the MongoDB, you can see here status code we are getting success, order status is success, then we have the transaction ID that we are getting here test underscore transaction ID. So in the previous API, you can see here these information, payment intent ID and client secret. So this is the client secret which we require to use to call from our Flutter application, and then on the basis of that the payment will be confirmed. Once the payment is confirmed, then we will call this update order ID, that is update API, by putting the transaction ID which we get from that confirmation, and on the basis of that the order will be confirmed in our database. So now let's test the last API, that is get request for the orders. So if I click on the send request, you can see here we are getting all the information, ID, user ID, then we have the products. Inside the product we have that IDs, product name, categories, descriptions, then we have every information, then amount, quantity, everything is coming up for that particular order, and this transaction ID, order status, everything is coming. So that means our all three APIs are working fine. So in the next video we will cover the integration of this API in our Flutter application, and on the basis of that our series will be completed by doing the Stripe payment method. After that we will do one more video regarding the deployment of all this API in the AWS. So I hope you like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like, comment, share. I will come back soon with another awesome video. Thank you for watching the video.